Who is Bryan Pointer? Well, I'm from Philly, Germantown to be specific, uptown. Great place to be, and really has made a lot of the man that I am today. Come from a two-parent household. My parents really set, a good foundation for the man that I've become. Growing up, I loved sports. I loved being a student athlete. I loved being an athlete, period. Like just the feeling of sports and, just running faster than somebody else. Like that was really, how I kind of made meaning of my body. Coming up, I was always interested in sports, but I was also interested in helping people. That was something that I always took great pride in, whether that was my friends, my family. Like that was really kind of the beginning of, who I was, what I wanted to do. Like I loved, playing sports. I loved helping people. And, growing up in Philly, I got everything that I really needed. All right. And Philly was, a different time, really, really coming up, man. But, as I, went to Germantown High School or graduated and was thinking about those next steps in my life, my parents didn't go to college. So I was a first generation college student. Although my brother, went to school, still consider myself a first generation college student. But even going into Delaware State University, I really had a fixed mindset. Like I really went to school to be a professional athlete because, growing up, that's all that I saw. My parents, they gave us everything that we needed. But as far as the lifestyle that I wanted, I'm like, I need to be a professional athlete because one, that's all that I saw. And that's all that I knew at the moment. And I'm like, okay, in order to, create a meaningful life for my family, like I have to be a professional athlete. So going into college, Delaware State, I majored in sport management because I like sports. My parents didn't have anything about college, so I didn't know anything about finance or economics. That just wasn't, within my cards. But I'm like, sports, that makes sense for me. I played sports, I'll study sports. And even throughout those years at Del State, no matter how close or far that dream was from me, it was always in my mind to be a professional athlete. And injuries derailed me. I feel like I could have been a great athlete, but that just wasn't in the cards for me. So, upon graduating from Del State, I was kind of confused when I'm like, I've been doing this for literally 15, 16, 17, 18 years now, and I got to figure out something else to do. And I've never even thought about, another career, another life for me. But going to Delaware State really changed my life. I had so many advisors, professors sit me down and really help me understand the skill set that I had. And I will never forget the date, May 15th, 2015. I promised myself I would never let another student athlete go through what I went through. A feeling lost, a feeling confused, a feeling that you weren't prepared for the world, a feeling that, you didn't have a meaningful experience in college to set you up to be a lifelong citizen. So I said that, I was going to be the best person that I could be, and I was going to do anything in my power to help student athletes. So I gave a presentation called The Smoke Screen of Pro Dreams back in Houston a few months ago that talked about, black men in academic spaces. One, talking about the athletic industrial complex, where it's really the introduction to the exploitation of African-American male athletes. When we see a lot of these, white coaches from private schools going into, our communities, recruiting, these young black men, come play for us. Like, we'll help you. And a lot of, black men go to these schools, they win championships, they go to the NCAA, all right? But the constant message is, like, I think that we've started this conversation off with, it's just like, your athletic talents and abilities, like, you can do all of that, but sometimes we're never even given the opportunity to explore what our minds can do for us. A lot of college coaches do use the recruiting tool of, we want you to come to our institution. We want you to be here. College athletics is the thing. Or even in high school, like, you could be a professional athlete. Or even when you hear within your families, you can make it. Like, this is something that you can do. But that speaks to the larger social, economic, and political disadvantages of poor working class communities. And a lot of communities that black people come from, all right? Most would say that, there's a sports fixation between, within young black men. But it's not a fixation. Black men are drawn towards sports to find a way to provide for their families. Like, they aren't surrounded by opportunities where, I can get into this finance program. I can get into, real estate, economics, like all these different opportunities. They aren't exposed to that. What do we grow up with? Like every day when I grew up in Philly, we at the basketball court. Everybody is there, everybody's playing, people are on the football field, people on the baseball field. Like that's what we're surrounded by. And a lot of our communities, the community programs that were there and in our high schools, deindustrialized, taken out within those communities. All right. All those programs that we used to have that our parents grew up with, like all of those suddenly disappear. So now, we are only familiar with things that we're surrounded by. All right. So if we're surrounded by sports, or if we only know that to be the only way, then of course we're going to be drawn to that. And then college coaches are going to use that to their advantage. A lot of these white football, basketball college coaches coming into black communities, extracting talent. Oh, we can help you, at our university. Come here, we'll set you up for a life. And I'm not saying that all of them are coming from ill intent, but for the majority, like going into these communities, all right, like these are young black men that have a lot of athletic talent. Come to our university, we'll make sure that you're okay, we'll set you up. But it's all smoke and mirrors at the end of the day, all right? But for the most part, in my opinion, like student athletes, specifically black male bodies, are exploited. It's so many different ways that we can talk about how black women aren't appreciated, exploited, used for talents, their mental abilities, but not appreciated for those talents. Like this, I think that's a completely different story. But absolutely, and always, we're always going to talk about the way and how to prepare you best to enter the spaces that you want to go into. So whether that's a track and field student athlete, basketball, tennis, lacrosse, I have black women in all of those different spaces. The conversation is always about, if you want to continue your career, one, these are some things that you might face, one, just as a black woman participating in that sport, but then two, just in life, like as a black woman or, a person of color. But if we're specifically talking about black women, black women are continually underpaid. They're not given the same opportunities, even as black men. Like black men are exploited, but black women are not provided with those same opportunities. All right. And even if they, one, our black women shine, there are so many black women that are doing great things, but not enough of those that are being appreciated for what they do. All right. And that they're being used, their ideas are being used, their talents are being used. But when we look at the forefront, a lot of them aren't appreciated for what they do. So a lot of those conversations do exist around the challenges and the hurdles because it's not going to be easy. Of course, you're going to graduate with a degree from Maryland. Like that's going to set you up amazing. But no matter, what the spaces that we enter as people of color, there are going to be challenges that come with that. And I'm always going to be honest about those. Like I'm not going to be peachy. Like it's, listen, we are all smart and brilliant and shine as black people, but we're going to face some challenges out here. My conversations are always centered around, one, using your skills and abilities, but then two, like, okay, we have everything that we need now. We need to talk about like how we're going to be challenged, we're going to be discriminated against, and sometimes exploited, but being aware of the spaces that we're entering and knowing how to navigate those spaces. Education has literally taken me places where I thought I would never be. Just having the opportunity and the space to, one, be within a setting where I'm learning something different that I've, never learned before, that I'm being exposed to new knowledge. That is the key right there. But, for the most part, you're gaining essential knowledge that you need within a higher education setting. But higher education, like, isn't, kind of separated from this. Like, they play a role in this too. The experiences of black men and black women within classrooms, all right? A lot of them, their race being used as a weapon to kind of, put them into this corner. Like, okay, like, oh, well, you're not prepared to be in this setting. You can't do this work. And a lot of them don't find or, aren't encouraged within those spaces too. So, economically exploited by athletics, but then intellectually diminished in the classroom. Like, where does that leave a student athlete? Because I don't know. Students have come to my office like, okay, like my professor told me they don't want me to be in my class. So, football is kind of all that I do have. So we got to look into the ways that our black men are continually pushed through sport. Like our black women are pushed through sports. But we see like within just sports alone, how our communities are treated. All right. And know like what happens in sports is what happens in society. Like those two things aren't mutually, exclusive. All right. Racism, exists within our society that, in turn mimics into sport. So it's a lot of work that needs to be done here. The key, that's what I think at the end of the day, is education. All right. Education is going to be the liberation for so many black people. If you are aware of, what you're being presented with, or if you're just aware of who you are, understand that there is so much more that your life has to offer other than sports. I always tell, student athletes, if you want to go pro or not, I'm always going to support you. But one day the game is going to end. Like, how can we set you up on your life outside of sports? Whether you can, you can indulge in sports, you can leverage, what you have now, but we have to think differently about, who you are, what your gifts are, and what you have to offer. At the end of the day, like the degree is not going to define you. Like you can get a degree in public health science, kinesiology, community health, family science. Like that is amazing. But what do you want to do? Like what is your skill set and how can you use that to do whatever that you want to do? So yeah, mainly when I'm sitting down with student athletes, it's just, okay, you've had this experience, you are an amazing athlete, but what's next? Whether that's a podcast, a foundation, an organization that you want to start, a job that you want to get, but specifically using your skill set to do whatever you want. And I think that we're in an age where we're seeing, more than an athlete. We're seeing players like, player empowerment, taking advantage of their stories, telling their own stories. And I think that the way that I've, evolved as a professional has kind of changed that view too. I can say when I first came into higher ed, I'm like, you got the degree, this is what you need to do. Like you need to follow these, these steps. But I found myself, changing. And I think that became, that was because of who I was changing, as a professional too. Like getting comfortable within my own skin. Because I'm like, if I'm going to always do this work, but I'm going to do this work and be me at the end of the day. And, with student athletes, you getting your degree, like how can you take that degree but then also do what you want to do. All right. Learn the rules, play the game your own way. Like you're never going to be defined by, somebody telling you what you need to do. But how can we use your college experience and then your degree to empower, wherever your life is going to take you? Yeah, like really looking back, if you would have asked Bryan from Philly, 10 years old, I mean, who really knew at 10 years old where they would be? But 15, 16, 17 years old, like, I had no idea I would be here doing this work. But each of my opportunities in life have given me a particular skill set. Even when, when we were working at the Eagles, like, that was just us talking, trying to figure things out, flush down our ideas. And even at, that time spent with you, like, I'm like, I really learned about where I wanted to be, who I wanted to be surrounded with, and how I was going to use my skills to help the people around me. All right. And, even now as a PhD student, researching not only the exploitation of African American males, but the policies and procedures that affect them. I continually, try to visualize and challenge myself on, where my life is going to take me. This right here is literally only the beginning of being an advisor. Long term, I can see myself being a professor. If it's one thing I do have, I have the ability to relate to people, to understand them, to understand their story. And then one, to, like I said, like help them realize the potential and possibility for their life. But then two, to be conscious about what happens in society. All right. there are so many quiet and invisible lines of power and privilege that Black people go through. All right. I don't care if you male, female, like that you're going to experience. You have to be aware of what's happening. All right. Like that's when we see, black student athletes that want to be professional, that's great. But be aware of what's going on. Like use your body and your talents for your life. Like don't let anybody else define you. Like we are people at the end of the day. All right. And it's hard because, we have life that's happening. We get caught up, but how many times do you really, sit down and really feel, yourself? I'm getting real theoretical right now. I'm about to get into my, my PhD realm, but really make sense of your body and who you are. Like we get caught up with, trying to, be productive, to make money, to spend money. But, I try to catch myself and just like, all right, Bryan, take some time, relax, like feel yourself, like it's a lot that really happens, within our world. And like I said, like my mission is to, educate those around us. Always think about where I'm going to go next. Maybe that's being a full-time professor. Maybe that's another avenue, going back into professional athletics, doing player engagement, player programs, working with professional athletes. But if it's one thing that God has put me on this earth to do, it's to help our people. I don't really have a defined position for, where I'm going to be, but I know that the skills that I have are going to help a lot of people. And wherever that calls me, it'll call me. But I'm always going to be here to help anybody, all right, no matter what I do.